What's up? It's Sunday. We've got an alphabet tag from Jim. Last week was R, and things came up, and then I kind of forgot to do it, and I feel bad. Feel extra bad because I was actually tagged by name in it because R is for Rowan. But I am gonna do S right now, and we'll see if I feel inspired. Maybe I'll do R later in the week because I've done all of them except for one. I think I missed L, maybe. But let's do S because I like the prompts. There's good prompts here. So first, S is for science fiction. What science fiction author have you read the most books by? Like, there aren't a lot of authors that I've read a ton of books by. The one exception is probably Stephen King. I've read a lot of Stephen King books, mostly when I was younger. So, some of the science fiction authors whose I've read at least maybe 3 or more books by. Neil Stephenson, who I was very into Neil Stephenson when I was in high school, around high school age. I got to see him do a book signing when Anathem came out, and he signed my very, very tattered and beat up mass market paperback copy of Snow Crash. I've probably read Snow Crash like 5 or 6 times. I was very into that book when I was younger. Another person I've read a number of books by would be Philip K. Dick. I have a ton of Philip K. Dick books that I just haven't ever gotten around to reading. I do want to read them, though. I like Philip K. Dick a lot. I've read Man in the High Castle and Valis and Scanner Darkly. I think that's it. Yeah. And Jeff Vandermeer. I've read the 3 Southern Reach books, as well as Born. And Vonnegut. I guess Vonnegut counts, right? I've read, a number of books by Vonnegut. Yeah. S is for Star Trek. What is your favorite Star Trek series? It's TNG, which is, kind of the boring choice. Recently, I have been thinking about, I think that probably, if I rewatched DS9, it might actually be my favorite. I rewatched TNG around when the pandemic started, and it's wonderful. I love that show. I understand if it's not everybody's cup of tea because it's a show. They don't make shows like that very much anymore. Maybe like Law and Order. SVU is the only Law and Order that's left, right? So SVU is kind of like that, where each episode is contained, and there's a little bit of a, overarching plot, but mostly it's a weekly thing, They don't make shows much like that anymore. But I like that. It's quaint. I think they should bring it back. I don't think every show needs to be, the way that it makes sense because, when we watch TV now, we're watching it streaming. We have every episode. We watch them in order. We binge them. So for there to be a through plot that, it's not being aired in syndication anymore. So, But I like that episodic style. S is for school story. What is your favorite book set in a school? A lot of my favorite books are set in schools. I'm not a big fan of young adult literature, teen literature. I don't have anything super against it, but usually I just don't super jive with it, but I do like books that are about teenagers a lot. Number of my favorite books are about teenagers, but they are written for adults. Um, Two of my absolute super favorites, the books I hold in highest of high regard, are both set in schools. That would be Infinite Jest, which of course a lot of the book takes place at the Enfield Tennis Academy in Boston, Massachusetts, and The Instructions by Adam Levin. I can't remember the name of the middle school from The Instructions right now. That's going to make me crazy that I can't remember that. But it's set almost entirely in the school, primarily in the CAGE program, which is like a sort of place where they mix special ed and behavioral problem kids together in a sort of segregated classroom away from the general student population. Those are both fantastic books, among my favorites. Another one of my favorite books is The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which has gained a lot of popularity over the last couple of years and is sort of considered the genesis of the dark academia style and vibe and everything. Don't let the trendiness of that book dissuade you from reading it. It is a very good book, especially if you're a mystery fan. I think you'd enjoy it particularly. It's not a whodunit, but it's a whydunit. Opens with a murder. A group of friends murder one of their friends, and then you have to read the book and find out why they did it. Great book. And that takes place at a small liberal arts college in New England. So, school, college, but yeah. S is for satire. What is your favorite satirical novel? Maybe I'll say J.R. by William Gaddis. I read this earlier in the year, this year, and it's a book that is about a young boy named J.R. who manages to create a number of paper companies over the phone that he manages to sort of spin into this business empire. And it's a satire of capitalism and the sort of hustle and grind mindset that you see a lot of, especially like young guys on like social media with this grind set mentality. And it's very amazing how prescient JR was in sort of satirizing that whole world, almost 50 years ago. And it's extremely funny. It's kind of hard to read. It's mostly told in dialogue that is not attributed to the speaker, so you have to kind of get a feel for the characters' voices and then use like context clues to figure out who's speaking, and even sometimes figuring out where they are and what is happening. And there's also no like chapter breaks, so scenes will sort of seamlessly transition from one to the next, and you can kind of lose track of where they are and who's talking, because characters will enter the conversation, but you won't be informed that they just begin speaking, right? So it's a little hard to read. Maybe not as hard to read as its reputation would have you believe, but yeah, very good book. S is for Steinbeck. What's your favorite Steinbeck novel? So I've read Of Mice and Men, and I've read Grapes of Wrath. I really did not like Grapes of Wrath very much, but I also read it under sort of the wrong circumstances. I had to read it as a summer project for honors English, where we had to like read it over the summer and then write a report on it. And that was like due on the first day of school, and I put it off until like a week before school started. So I had to read the. It's a decently sized book. It's like 600 pages long. I had to read the whole thing and write the paper on it in a week, and it was fucking miserable, and I hated it. Mice and Men is pretty good though. I like that one. So let's say that. S is for Sartre. Is Sartre worth reading? So, I think yes. The answer is yes. I will admit that my level of familiarness with Sartre's work is not a ton. I read No Exit, his play, very famous play. And I own copies of Nausea, his novel, and his nonfiction philosophy work, Being and Nothingness. I did start Being and Nothingness. I read maybe 100 pages of it. It is pretty hard to read, and it is also very long. It's like 700 pages long. But it is very cool and good. And I like existentialism. I think it's pretty groovy. I think it's a pretty good philosophy. I think most philosophies have good things to offer, you know? I don't know if there's necessarily ever going to be a definitive one. But I think more than a lot of people who get bandied around a lot on BookTube, Sartre is worth reading. Absolutely. Especially because he was so talented in so many disciplines. You know, he can write like a dense nonfiction philosophical text that's like so foundational, like Being in Nothingness, as well as like one of the most famous plays of all time, No Exit, as well as prose. You know, like a very talented guy. S is for Shakespeare. What is your favorite Shakespeare play? My favorite Shakespeare play is Hamlet. I like Hamlet. I like story about teenagers, angsty stuff. Enjoy that. And he's the one. But I also do enjoy Othello and The Tempest and Midsummer. There's quite a few that I like a lot. I'm not big on the histories. They're whatever. But yeah. And then sub question is, what was the last Shakespeare play you saw performed live at the theater? When I was in college, I took a 300 level Shakespeare literature elective, and as part of that, I was required to go see a Shakespeare play and write a report on it. However, I lied and did not go, and had my friend in the class tell me what the production was like and let me read his paper, and then I pretended I went and wrote my own paper. So, because of that, the last time I saw Shakespeare live was when I was in high school. When I was a senior, I went to a performing arts school, and my school did Midsummer Night's Dream when I was a senior. And I had I knew all the people who were in the play, obviously, but most of them were people that I didn't like. And then the music, they had a live score, and the music was written, I think mostly written by one of my best friends, Alex. And I think he did. I don't think he wrote all of it. I think it might have been collaborative between him and a couple other guys. And then they they did the accompaniment for the performances. And so even though I didn't like all the people in the play, I went and saw it just so I could hear Alex's score, which was very good. And it was very fun. It was enjoyable. Good time. I think looking back, they had Puck ride a ripstick around the stage, which, if you don't know, it's like a skateboard that only has 2 wheels that you have to kind of like twist your feet back and forth to like make it wiggle forward, so you can like make it perpetually move in forward, but it's like it requires like practice and skill to do it. But the guy who played Puck, he could ride it, and I think he probably suggested it. But he like when Puck appears for the first time, he like came down a fucking ramp on a ripstick in like Aladdin. He had like an Aladdin outfit on, like a vest and parachute shorts and a little hat, riding a ripstick. It was 2008, you know, like these things were more common back then. S is for short story. What is your preferred length for fictional reading matter? I am a strong proponent that whatever length the story needs to be is the correct length, and the length that I want it to be. Some of my favorite books are extremely long. Earlier I mentioned The Instructions and Infinite Jest. Both of those books are over 1,000 pages long. But I also really like shorter things. Shorter novels are often great. And short stories. I love short stories. George Saunders is one of my favorite authors of all time. And, you know, he has now, somewhat recently, I guess it's been like 4 or 5 years now, written a novel, though it's, you know, not a very conventional novel. But, you know, for 20 plus years, his entire career up to that point, which was very, you know, respectable, and he was very acclaimed and loved and sold many books, he only wrote short stories. I think it's very telling that once he wrote a novel, he like became significantly more popular and mainstream. People, I think, generally don't like reading short stories, but you know, he wrote almost exclusively short stories, and he's wonderful. And Alice Munro, Canadian author, she won the Nobel Prize. She writes pretty much exclusively short stories. I think maybe even exclusively short stories, and she's fantastic. I think some of Stephen King's best stuff is short fiction. I like short stories a lot. Adam Levin, the guy who wrote The Instructions, he has a short story collection that came out like a year or two after The Instructions called Hot Pink. That's a lot of stuff that he wrote. Like when he was in grad school, he studied. He went to Syracuse, and studied under Saunders. Saunders was his like thesis advisor, and so he's got, you know, he's being taught by a master. He's got very good stories. There's one, I think it's the first story in that collection, that's about a dad who sees this like Dateline NBC special about eating disorders, and it like in children, and it like really deeply affects him, and so he decides to create this doll for children to teach them how to like eat in a healthy way and not get eating disorders, basically. And it like becomes this obsession with him that like drives him to the brink of sanity and like destroys his family life, and it takes him like 10 years, and it's narrated by his son, who spends his entire like adolescence watching his dad like go crazy trying to make this doll, the Bonnie. It's called the Bonnie doll. It's definitely like you can see the Saunders influence in it. The tone is very Saunders, but it's brilliant. It's funny. It's heartbreaking. And like all great short stories, it manages to do so much with so little. Yeah, I love short stories. S is for subscribers, not a prompt, just a thank you, because Jim has passed 500 subscribers. That's awesome. I've gained a good amount of subscribers since I started doing book talk. I've had this account, if you go and look at my About section, you will notice that I've had this account for almost 16 years. I first signed up for YouTube in February 2006 because I wanted to upload footage that I took at a Animal Collective concert with my mom's still digital camera. I had like 10-second clips of video. They're probably still on my channel if you go back far enough. I had been using YouTube for a little while at that point, but I had never bothered to make an account until I had something to actually upload. So 2006, pretty early in the YouTube world. And then I had a few. I would upload things, random things, over the years. I have a couple of old videos that have a decent amount of views that are like Animal Collective radio sessions that I downloaded off of a fan forum in 2006 and then uploaded to YouTube, and nobody else had, and they're still there, and they've got like 500,000 views. And so just from crap like that, over 15 years, I sort of accumulated like 150 subscribers. So when I started doing Booktube, I had like 150 subscribers. But now I'm up, I haven't checked it in a little bit, but I was like a little over 300 last time I checked. So I had a head start, a little bit of a head start. But, that's sweet. 500 is awesome. That's great. Congratulations to Jim. Bonus prompts. S is for supernatural. What is your favorite supernatural story? I'm going to go with my favorite thing I've read this year. I've touted this book many times on this channel since I read it, but that is, of course, Negative Space by B.R. Yeager. There's some supernatural, sort of occult type things, drugs that sort of allow you to access portals to other dimensions, and there's some sort of supernatural force afoot that is causing people to kill themselves in rapid numbers in this small New England town. And it's a great book. Absolutely, like, checks every single box for me of, like, shit that I just, like, really like, tropes that I really like. Like, you've got your dark, spooky, occult, supernatural shit. You've got drugs and, like, addicts. You've got teenagers. You've got the suburbs, or, like, smallish town. America. Like, there's just a lot to like about that book, and I cannot recommend it enough. S is for superhero. Who is your favorite superhero? So, this is a kind of a complicated, hard question. Because my favorite superhero, in the sense of, I think he's the best character, is Rorschach from Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen. That being said, of course, Rorschach is a terrible person. He's a anti-intellectual, homophobic, racist, misogynistic, reactionary, far right fascist who hates poor people and drug addicts and is an incel, and he sucks in basically every way that a person can suck. And he loves hurting people. He's just bad. He's just a bad guy, like, all around. But he's such a good character. Such an interesting character. Such a fascinating foil for some of the other characters in Watchmen. A character who is unilateral in his thinking. He sees exclusively in black and white, which is an important component in a story that is so much about ambiguousness and morally gray choices. Yeah. So let's just say Gambit from X-Men and then move on. Scandinavian noir. Have you tried this subgenre of crime fiction? I read the original Millennium Trilogy, Stieg Larsson, The Girl With books, when they were like at their most extremely popular, so like circa 2010, 2011, like shortly after the third one was published in English. And I liked them. I thought they were, for a mystery series, I thought that they had a lot going for them. They had a very smart, strong, non-traditional female lead character that's very cool. There's obviously something to be said about the way that male authors brutalize and traumatize their female characters as a way to, give them motivation or a backstory that, ends up being like the defining feature of this person and how problematic that can be. I think that there is something to be said for that in these books, but I also think it's maybe not as bad as it is in a lot of other things. And I do think that the way that I don't think that Lisbeth Salander is defined by her trauma. It's not the defining feature of her that I think of, right? And so there's a lot of other Scandinavian crime fiction out there, Jan Nesbø and others, but I have not read any of the other stuff, nor have I read the Millennium series books that have been written by other authors posthumously after Larsson's passing. I'm open to it, though. Maybe I might read The Snowman someday. It sounds like kind of a cool book. I think that I like Scandinavian art a lot. I'm a very big fan of Lars von Trier, the Danish filmmaker, and I'm a big fan of a lot of Scandinavian music. Jens Lekman, the sort of indie pop, rock, electronica singer-songwriter, Swedish gentleman, as well as, of course, like Swedish heavy music, black metal stuff, Dark Throne and Ulver and Mayhem, of course. And yes, Philosophem by Burzum is a good album. He is not a good person. He is a terrible, terrible, terrible person. But that album is pretty good. Alright, and that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.